Imagine being so famous that millions adore you, so talented you could have succeeded at a dozen different careers, and so beloved that studios shut down for your funeral. Now imagine dying at 31 in a padded room, your body destroyed, your name becoming synonymous with scandal. That's exactly what happened to Wally Reid, and the story of how he got there exposes one of Hollywood's darkest secrets. December 1922, America's favorite movie star checks into a sanitarium. Within weeks, newspapers across the country are running headlines that shatter his squeaky-clean image. The morphine addict they're writing about isn't some seedy underworld figure. He's the guy who represented everything wholesome about America. Athletic, handsome, married with kids. The total opposite of controversial stars like Rudolph Valentino. Except Valentino didn't end up wasting away in isolation while his organs failed one by one. Here's what makes Wally Reid's story so disturbing. He wasn't some reckless partier looking for his next high. He was a guy who got hurt on the job, and what happened next destroyed him completely. Wally Reid wasn't just an actor. He was basically a superhero in real life. The man played multiple instruments and sang so well that opera legend Geraldine Ferrar told him to pursue it professionally, and painted artwork that Hollywood's elite hung in their homes. He excelled at football, track, and boxing. He set speed records racing cars in California and was good enough mechanically to rebuild engines himself. Cecil B. DeMille called him an 1,800-pound diamond. Women wanted him. Men wanted to be him. He won popularity contest after popularity contest in fan magazines. And here's the kicker. He never even wanted to be an actor. His real dream was directing. I hope to make the name of Wallace Reid director stand for a great deal more than Wallace Reid actor, he told reporters. Born into a theatrical family in 1892, Reid tried breaking into film as a cameraman, not an actor. Then came a tiny role in D.W. Griffith's film The Birth of a Nation in 1915. Reid played a blacksmith, shirtless and working at his forge. That one scene, muscles rippling, all-American good looks on display, launched him into superstardom. Paramount immediately signed him to a massive contract worth the equivalent of $4 million a year in today's money. He married actress Dorothy Davenport in 1913, had a son, adopted a daughter, and built a custom Mediterranean villa with a swimming pool and panoramic views. Picture postcards featured his backyard. His films mixed comedy, romance, and thrilling car racing sequences that audiences couldn't get enough of. Crew members loved him because he'd suddenly orchestrate early wrap-ups so everyone could go home. Everything about Wally Reid screamed success. But in 1919, something happened that would unravel all of it. The cast and crew of Valley of the Giants were filming in Oregon when their train derailed. Wally suffered serious injuries, a major gash on his arm and a 4-inch wound on his skull. The on-set doctor did what doctors commonly did back then for severe pain. He administered morphine, one injection. That's all it took. Morphine in the 1920s wasn't viewed the way we see opioids today. Doctors prescribed it freely. Nobody really understood addiction yet. And for someone like Wally, working grueling hours making film after film, that morphine must have felt like a miracle. So he kept using it. Here's where it gets really dark. As films became longer and more physically demanding, Wally's body couldn't keep up. And according to multiple sources, Paramount knew about it. They allegedly provided him with a drug to keep him working. Each dose cost about $80, $1,000 in today's money. Wally was burning through cash buying morphine while simultaneously trying to hide his addiction from everyone. For 3 years, he kept up the charade, 24 films while completely hooked. His wife Dorothy started noticing changes, weight loss, mood swings, personality shifts. But Wally insisted he could handle it alone. "I thought I was big enough to fight my own battle and win," he eventually confessed to her. The parties at his house got wilder. Drinking during Prohibition, strangers showing up uninvited and stealing liquor. Rumors of affairs, whispers about his drug dealers getting arrested. And through it all, Wally kept showing up on set, kept delivering performances, and kept pretending everything was fine. Until October 1922. First day of shooting Nobody's Money, Wally fumbled around the set, bumped into a chair, sat down on the floor, and started crying. Then he collapsed completely. They rushed him to the hospital. America's most wholesome heartthrob had just fallen apart in front of everyone. By December, Wally was transferred to a sanitarium, and Dorothy made a decision that would shock the entire country. She went public. December 16, 1922. The Los Angeles Times ran an exclusive interview with Dorothy at their home. She didn't sugarcoat anything. Wallace always drank to some extent, she admitted, and about 2 years ago began to use drugs. He was very ill at the time and had suffered an injury to his head. There was a great deal of work at his studio, and he felt that he must keep up somehow.
Dorothy's mother backed her up with even more disturbing details. The house wasn't a home anymore. It was a roadhouse. People coming and going at all hours. Constant drinking, theft, chaos. Fans were devastated. How had they been so deceived? But Dorothy wanted people to understand what Wally was going through. He thought he would die the other night, she told the New York Times. For 3 nights, he expected to die. He isn't afraid to die, but he wants so much to live for Billy and Betty and me. The treatment itself was almost as dangerous as the addiction, the Crabo method. That's what they called it. A cocktail of substances including curare, the same plant compound used as arrow poison in South America. But instead of getting better, Wally got worse. His kidneys started failing, respiratory problems set in. Some historians believe the treatment was actually replacing one addiction with another. By January 1923, Wally had been moved to a private sanitarium, where Dorothy stayed by his side. In his final days, he was confined to a padded room, his body shutting down piece by piece. On January 12, 1923, Wallace Reid took his last breath. He was 31 years old. The funeral was massive. Studios closed so people could attend. Hundreds of floral arrangements flooded the Reid home. Hollywood was in shock, not just because a major star had passed, but because his death exposed the ugly truth about what was happening behind the scenes. The drugs, the studio's enabling addiction to keep profits flowing. But here's where Wally Reid's story takes an even stranger turn. Dorothy didn't disappear quietly into grief. She became a crusader. In 1923, she co-produced and starred in a film called Human Wreckage, billing herself as Mrs. Wally Reid, a name she'd used for the next 57 years until her own death in 1977. The film was anti-drug propaganda, and Dorothy personally showcased it across the country. At the end, she broke character and spoke directly to the audience, urging them to join her fight against narcotics. Behind the scenes, Dorothy was secretly working with Will Hayes, the man who would later strangle Hollywood creativity with his infamous moral code. Human Wreckage became part of Hollywood's massive cleanup campaign, leading directly to the oppressive studio system that would dominate for decades. Meanwhile, Dorothy lost everything. Wally had been financially drained. Between the expensive morphine, less blackmail payments, and his extravagant lifestyle, there wasn't much left. The house was eventually leased to a gambler who turned it into an illegal casino. Police raided it on the day of the 1929 stock market crash. In 1961, the house was demolished. And Wally? He just faded away. While Rudolph Valentino, who also passed at 31, became an immortal Hollywood legend, Wally Reid became a cautionary tale. His films weren't revived in the 1930s like Valentino's were. They were left to disintegrate, literally rotting away in forgotten archives. Out of over 200 films Wally made, most are lost forever. His name doesn't appear on lists of silent film greats. There's no cult following, no annual memorials, just a grave at Forest Lawn Memorial Park and the faint memory of scandal. Here's the twisted part. The area where Wally lived became synonymous with the exact thing that destroyed him. In 1982, John Belushi fatally overdosed at the Chateau Marmont, just blocks from where Wally's house once stood. In 1993, River Phoenix collapsed outside the Viper Room nearby. The same neighborhood, the same demons, different decades. So why did Wally Reid disappear from history, while others became legends? Maybe because his story is too uncomfortable. It exposes how Hollywood chewed up and spit out its talent from the very beginning. It shows how studios prioritize profit over people, and how America wanted its stars to be perfect until they weren't, and then they wanted to forget they ever existed. Wally Reid was extraordinary, talented in ways most people only dream about, beloved by millions, and ultimately betrayed by an industry that claimed to care about him. His wife spent more than half a century keeping his memory alive, but even that wasn't enough. The next time you hear about a celebrity struggling with addiction, Remember Wally Reid. Remember that behind every headline is a real person, and that sometimes the very people who create stars are the same ones who destroy them. His story didn't have to end the way it did, but it did, and Hollywood just moved on.